Hey, I'm Aaron. Today I'm going to talk about the 12.1 patch notes. I'm going to be talking about it from a game design perspective and some concepts from game design and kind of going over the changes in general. Let's get into it. So, first off, they're buffing Diana. The AP ratio is going from 40% to 50%, and monster damage is going from 250 to 300%. Uh, they did this because Diana is sitting in a pretty low win rate, around 45 or 46% in the jungle. She used to be super powerful, dominant in pro play, and decent in solo queue if you knew how to play her strategically. But she was also sitting at like a 48 or 49% win rate even when she was at her most powerful. Um, they're bringing her back. That this is giving her all of her power back that she used to have, plus a buff on top of that. I expect her to be dominant in pro play again, as pretty much the strongest AP jungler, and yeah, good in solo queue if you know how to, stay back and play her strategically in the jungle. Uh, Gangplank. So his mana cost for his Q is going down by 5 mana at every rank, and the cooldown is going down by zero point 0.5 seconds. So Gangplank lost a lot of laning power when they changed how his Q works with Grasp. It now counts as a ranged attack, which makes Grasp less powerful. He now has First Strike, and that does give you some laning power, but it's not the type of power that keeps your opposing laner from playing the game. You're just getting more gold in lane, which is good because you can scale up to late game where you're one-shotting people with barrels with a super glass cannon type build. But he was really strong in lane before, and I think they're giving him some of that power back. The mana cost reduction is going to let him cast more of his Qs before he gets Essence Reaver. Maybe he doesn't have to rush Essence Reaver, although you really want your Sheen early. And his cooldown is going down because not every Q is a Grasp proc now. So I think it's a good Gangplank change. I think a lot of people bring down Gangplank's win rate because they try him seeing streamers play Gangplank or seeing people get one-shotted by his barrel combos. But I think overall he's a little weak, especially like his laning is a lot weaker. Reksai is next. So when I first saw Reksai on the change list, I was a little concerned. He does have a pretty high win rate, but I think his win rate is inflated due to the fact that he's super low play rate, and people aren't really like picking up Reksai because they saw other people play it. He's kind of just like a champion for people to one trick, which is going to inflate his win rate because only good Reksai players are playing Reksai. But then I looked into the data, and as they mentioned in the explanation, his Emax is really strong right now. If you look at the data, it's actually a whole 3.7 percentage points higher, although it is a lower sample size. I think this is enough games to determine that it's pretty strong. And yeah, they nerfed his damage from 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 to 55, 60, 65, 70, 75. So just nerfing the scaling on that and giving you a buff at level 1 if you're just a Rek'Sai player that maxes Q. And then the tunnel, its cooldown is just going up at the later ranks, but it's staying the same at level 1. So no changes if you're maxing Q, pretty much. I mean, you are going to get nerfed a little bit into the late game, but Rek'Sai is really an early game champion, and getting 5 extra damage, double that when he has Max Fury, is pretty significant in the early game. So I expect Qmax Rek'Sai to stay pretty strong. For the people that play him, 53% win rate is pretty good for like a one-trick type champion. Yep. So Sona's getting nerfed, and I saw a lot of kind of complaints on Twitter about like why is Sona getting nerfed. It seems kind of random, and I think there's a disconnect here between like certain areas of the community and like what the data shows, and yeah, Sona's really strong. So we can look at the data, and she has a 54% win rate, which is the highest in the game. You go to tier list, and Sona and Soraka are at the top with both the highest win rates in the game. Now, win rate doesn't mean everything. A lot of different behaviors can influence it, inflate win rates and deflate win rates based on how people behave, how difficult a champion is, what type of players are playing it, all that stuff. But when you see both of these champions that are pretty similar, building the same items, doing the same runes, it's a pretty strong pattern. I think these are two of the strongest champions in the game. I think both of them need a nerf, and I think it has to do with Moonstone Renewer and their recent reworks. You know, Soraka got that change where her R clears everybody of grievous wounds, which is really strong, and Sona got a pretty decent sized rework. Both of them are really strong. I expected them both to be nerfed. I think it also has to do with tank supports got nerfed. You know, they got that new tool in Even Shroud, the new tank support mythic. But even that was nerfed. Leona was nerfed. All this stuff. So I think Sona and Soraka are due for both sizable nerfs. Sona did not get a sizable one. Her armor growth went down a decent amount. You know, you're losing like, what is it, like 6 armor or something at level 18, which is support is never going to get to. Like, realistically, you're losing like 3 armor in an actual game that matters. Her E song is going up by 2 seconds, which is decent. I think her E song is kind of some of the problem with like invisible power and like where you're 5v5ing and the fight doesn't seem close, but you can't tell what's beating you. Something like Sona can be the culprit there, and her E is a big one. You know, movement speed is kind of hard to tell how hard it affects a fight. So it's a good place to nerf. I just don't think it's enough, and I'm honestly surprised that a lot of people don't think that Sona is absurdly strong, because she is. All right, Eclipse. Eclipse passive is going from 6 seconds to 8 seconds. So this was a change that they did in preseason to make all lethality mythics cost 100 less, and they also reduced Eclipse passive cooldown by 2 seconds. That change is getting reverted. I don't think it's a big deal for most assassins because they can just one-shot you anyways. Maybe it's a decently sized change for assassins that are going a more Conqueror build or something like Jace or like a hybrid type of play style. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me. I don't think Eclipse is the strongest mythic for assassins, but I don't think it has to do with Eclipse being overpowered. I think it's just kind of a jack of all trades. The other lethality mythics are too weak. Duskblade and Prowler's Claw Prowler's Claw is kind of situational, and Duskblade is not very good. So I think that's why it was seeing a lot of play. I don't think this is a big change. Honestly, I'm not really sure why it's here. Force of Nature. So Force of Nature was a strong item, and it's getting buffed. Its stack duration is going from 5 seconds to 7 seconds. Magic reduction is going from 20 to 25. They say in the title that they're trying to make it the marquee magic resist item, which makes a lot of sense. You know, like Spirit Visage and Abyssal Masks do other things that aren't completely magic resistance focused. So I like this identity for Force of Nature. It was already strong. I'm fine with them buffing low play rate things to make them see more play. Even if they already are pretty powerful, especially if it's something like a tank legendary that's already situational. Like, it's going to affect so few games negatively that I think it's worth people like being able to notice it now that it's buffed. Yeah, I think it's super strong. I think this duration makes the item work better. It's kind of a quality of life change, but it definitely makes it more powerful, obviously. And, you know, this makes it even more of like the signature magic resistance item. So good changes overall. It might need to be scaled back, but probably not. Immortal Shieldbow. This is a big villain right now. its attack damage is getting reduced by 5, and the lifeline shield is going down. So for AD carry mythics, I think there wasn't a big enough separation between Gale Force and Kraken Slayer and Immortal Shieldbow. So Immortal Shieldbow right now has 55 AD, Gale Force has 60, Kraken Slayer has 65. I think making Immortal Shieldbow 50 AD makes it a pretty big gap between Gale Force and Shieldbow, and it makes it more clearly like this is a defensive item. It does not deal as much damage as the other ones. I think building Shieldbow and a lot of AD carries was too free. You know, Shieldbow into Phantom Dancer was a sleeper build on a lot of different AD carries. Caitlyn, Jinx, Ashe, even Vayne, stuff like that. And now it's maybe way more defensive, and you're going to have to maybe build a super high damage item if you want to build it, or only build it in the cases where there's an assassin on the enemy team that's super strong. The other problem with Shieldbow is on melees like Yasuo, Yone. There's a pretty big systematic problem with champions like that, where they don't really have healing in their kit, but they're super healing intensive, and it's hard to tell how strong they are even when they're at low health, because like they're going to get this huge shield and then they get this, you know, more power, and it's bad, and it needs a nerf. I think that Shieldbow could eventually get reworked to be more of an anti-assassin item and less of this like fighting scrappy item that it kind of is right now. I don't even think it's very good at doing its job of like preventing AD carries from getting one-shotted. I think something like Crown is a lot better at doing that. So maybe it could get reworked somehow. I think they could also add another AD carry mythic and make Immortal Shieldbow cost less, kind of differentiate between, you know, like damage items like Kraken and Gale Force, or maybe Kraken and a new mythic, and then make Gale Force and Shieldbow cost less and have them be the more situational ones. But overall, I like that this thing's getting nerfed. Wit's End. So Wit's End had the problem of it was both really good in on-hit builds like Vayne, because it has a bunch of attack speed and a bunch of on-hit damage, and it dealt really high damage on every AD carry and some bruisers, and it made you pretty much invincible to any LeBlanc or Annie that wasn't super far ahead, or Akali. So you had to get rid of one of these problems. You're not going to get rid of the on-hit, because that's kind of what the item was made for, kind of bruisers and on-hit champions. But you could lower its damage, or you could lower its magic resist. I like the change that they did, and they also changed the build path, giving you pickaxe, and you know, you have to build null magic mantle instead of Negatron cloak. I think this is better for like more aggressive, maybe AD carry champions, this build path, and it's worse for bruisers like maybe Zinjal would like the Negatron cloak more. I don't think it matters that much though, and I think the item was super powerful. There's a lot of other powerful stuff in the game, but this one was specifically kind of a flaw in design. It does too much when there's any champion on the enemy team that is even remotely countered by it. So I like the change they did. All right, teleport. Teleport's the last one, and it's a big one. So they are making teleport go from kind of the normal teleport to an unleashed teleport. And now the normal teleport is completely nerfed. But anyways, so teleport, the first one, goes from 420 seconds to 210 seconds, down to 360 seconds at all levels. So if we look at the teleport changes, so 360, you're basically getting the power of a level 6 teleport. But you can't teleport to anything but towers, which is what this says. But once 14 minutes hits, it basically turns it back into the old teleport, which is Unleashed Teleport. And that Unleashed Teleport is 240 seconds, which the level is, you know, in between level 15 and 16 teleport. So how does this affect the game? One, scaling top laners like Kale or Ornn or Gangplank or, you know, a bunch of them don't really care. They didn't want to follow enemy top laners to the bot lane anyways. This is even a buff for them because they don't have to deal with that and how their enemy top laner can affect the map more than them. They were usually using their teleport to get back to lane. And maybe some fighter champions are going to forego teleport more often, take Flash Ignite, Flash Exhaust, Flash Ghost, things like this, and not like Ignite teleport or Ghost Ignite or Ghost teleport. They might start taking Ghost Ignite, I don't know. But yeah, so it kind of separates them into two camps. Like you're the scalers or you're the fighters they're more looking to play Flash Ignite and forego teleport now. How much less teleport we'll see, I'm not really sure. Teleport is super important in a lot of matchups. You are kind of getting a buff at most levels until level 6. So like champions that are super weak early, like Kale or mainly I think of Kale, or maybe champions that can have mana problems, that might want to teleport pre-6. They get a small buff, but it's not really noticeable. For mid lane, I think mages are still going to take teleport because a lot of the combat summoner spells are not really that strong in them, besides like barrier or ghost for some of them. But I could see a little bit less teleport being taken, but mostly mid lane has been about, at least in professional play, has been about, you know, getting push on the lane and physically roaming to bot lane or top lane instead of teleporting there. But the champion that is behind in mid lane usually has to clear their wave and then teleport to catch up with the person that got push on them. So it might be, although they're teleporting, they can still teleport to the top tower, so they still have that functionality. So I don't really see a big change there. For bot lane, you know, basically only Ziggs was taking teleport. You could arguably take it on like Varus or something, but this is pretty much not a change for them, and maybe a buff because Ziggs has mana issues, but like most of the time you're teleporting around level 5 or 6, and there's barely any change to the cooldown now. But I don't think Ziggs really cares about this change, and will definitely still take teleport. I think this was a good change. I think something that this does is it prevents people from abusing teleport, where they would, you know, keep one minion alive under tower with their teleport so that their team could dive bot lane. This was kind of where the line crosses from an intuitive, innovative use of a game mechanic that wasn't intended into just repeatable abuse of it. It was more about keeping the minion alive than it was teleporting your top laner down to bot lane when you used it like that. And it was pretty consistent that you were able to do that. So I think some of the lure of top lane is just this like 1v1 boxing match that's separated from people, and at least in high levels of play, it's going to be more about that now. Now that you can't teleport bot, there are going to be less of these double teleport bot lane fights, which I think overall is a pretty good change for the game. This might change the meta a lot, especially in pro play, but we'll just have to see. It's a complicated change, and I'm excited to see the effects of it in pro play. I really don't think that like in your gold games or whatever it affects your top lane gameplay, because the amount of times that you were teleporting bot in even average skill or even like platinum or diamond, and you were getting value by teleporting bot, were astronomically low. So I don't think this change really matters for most players. Also, the Unleashed teleport icon looks really cool. Anyways, so the rest of the notes are just like Clash and some changes for ranked banners and bug fixes, and then we get these two skins. The Echo skin is missing for some reason, so I don't know when that one's coming. That one looks great. Echo is one of my favorite characters. But these skins look good. anyways, that is all the changes for 12.1. It's a pretty small patch, but teleport could be a huge change. I'm excited for Diana coming back into the jungle. It's going to be really powerful. Don't sleep on it. Other than that, I don't think the changes are that big. This is a pretty big Vayne nerf. You see Vayne is not listed in the patch notes, but she is listed twice here. So keep that in mind. Other than that, that is it for me. Thanks for watching.